Get £20 in risk-free bets for the Euros when you join SBK. That's money back in cash on your first £20 losses. Well worth a go. Hello and welcome to episode 34 of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer. As usual, I'm joined by the one and only football writer and broadcaster, Dean Jones, to discuss all the latest news and gossip from the world of football. Hiya, Dean. Sore heads all around the country, I think, today after England's big win against Germany. You were there in person to see it. Lucky you. And one of the key players in that game was Jack Grealish, who came off the bench and played an instrumental role in both the goals for England. It's not just his place in the England team that people are talking about right now. Should he start, or Gareth Southgate right to keep him on the bench? We're talking about his club future as well right now, with Manchester City reportedly lining up a £100 million bid to try and lure Grealish away from Villa Park this summer to the Etihad, while Aston Villa are doing all they can to try and keep hold of their star man. What's your latest take on the future for Jack Grealish this summer?
I think it's going to be it would be a big decision for him to sign a new contract. And I think that he would be using Harry Kane's situation as kind of a warning as to what can happen if you do sign that new contract. Talk is that Aston Villa are willing to pay him 150 grand a week. That's all well and good. And I know that Jack Grealish is very loyal, but he's also got big ambitions for himself. And I think after this tournament, being in this squad, he's the man of the moment. He is understanding now what it's like to be a superstar. He's kind of taken that next step now. And while Aston Villa are very ambitious themselves, it's not the same level of ambition. Aston Villa aren't going to get as far as Jack Grealish can go, right? So he's at the moment on the crest of a wave, potentially winning the Euros if it all goes well. So he's going to come out of that and he's going to be like, well, now I want more. I want to win the Premier League. I want to win the Champions League. And he's not going to do that with Aston Villa. So why would he sign a new contract to Aston Villa? That doesn't make any sense to me. He's already got a decent contract there. If he wants to stay with Aston Villa, then fine. I don't think it's a good idea to tie himself down any further. Also, he'll get better terms than that at Man City. Yeah. They'll probably pay him 200 upwards, right? I just think it's a big decision for Grealish, and I'd be surprised if he signed a new contract.
Yeah, he only signed a new one last summer. Obviously, the new offer on the table from Villa will be, as you said, close to £150,000 a week, but that's not going to be anything for Manchester City to worry about. They could offer him a lot more than that as well. I think it comes down to ambition right now for Jack Grealish. As you said, Dean, can Villa break into those European places? It might take them a few years. A very ambitious club, but Manchester City offer you Champions League football, the chance to work under Pep Guardiola. Surely Jack Grealish is going to be tempted by the prospect of working under Guardiola and winning major silverware like the Premier League title and the Champions League.
Exactly. And it's all very well. I completely understand Aston Villa's stance on this. Like, they're saying he's not for sale. Understood. I think if they are going to sell him, it's got to be an extraordinary amount of money and probably a British transfer record. So once an offer comes in, say there is genuinely a £100 million offer for Jack Grealish, and Grealish wants to go, and you take that money, I think everybody ends up understanding. Like, you can't hold the player back. You've got an unbelievable deal on the player. And you can say to the fans, look, we had no choice here. And it also gives you money to reinvest. Villa are ambitious and they're in the market right now trying to do some very interesting moves. But Tammy Abraham, Emil Smith-Rowe, as good a players as they are, they're not Harry Kane, Raheem Sterling, Phil Foden, are they? And that's the level that Jack Grealish is trying to strive for. And that's what he can get from Man City.
Yeah.
Potentially. Harry Kane's not there yet.
Yeah. Well, could they do both, Grealish and Kane, or do you think it's one or the other? £100 million for Grealish, it's going to be 150 probably for Kane. Can they do both, Man City?
I mean, not at the moment, but we need some clarity really on what's happening with financial fair play, because it's all quite blurred at the moment over whether there are going to be any ramifications from it going forward. Obviously, last year it was kind of paused, and there was no fallout from clubs spending a bit more money and leaning on personal wealth. At the moment, clubs like Man City and Chelsea are starting to feel like they might be able to dig into their pockets a bit deeper than they would have been allowed to before. So if they can do that, then yeah, they can sign both. But it'll be interesting to see whether that's the case. And obviously they will get a couple out the door as well.
Yeah, there will be big moves probably in and out at the Etihad this summer as well. I think. But Jack Grealish, all his focus right now is on the Euros, and I'm sure speculation over his future, whether it's at Aston Villa or Manchester City, will ramp up once the tournament is over. Sticking with Villa, Dean, you did mention there that Villa, ambitious club, got ambitious plans for this summer. They've already brought in Emi Buendia from Norwich in a big money deal, beating Arsenal to the Argentine signature. Lots of reports suggesting Tammy Abraham is the next on their list right now. We all know he's been frozen out of things at Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel. He doesn't seem like he's got a future at Stamford Bridge while the German is there. So Tammy, who had a good loan spell at Aston Villa a couple of seasons ago, helped them win promotion to the Premier League. Do you think he would be a good fit for Villa and maybe a good sort of signal of their ambitions?
I think it'd be a really good fit. I think that's exactly the kind of move that they should be looking for. And when you hear about their plans, it fits perfectly. Young, talented, ambitious, go in there up front with Ollie Watkins and Buendia, like you say, potentially Grealish if he does stick around, and maybe Emil Smith-Rowe or somebody like that will come in too. So it's looking like an attacking, exciting setup there at Aston Villa for next season. And I think that will be very much what Tammy Abraham wants to be part of. The only other club that really have shown concrete interest have been West Ham, but they can't really stretch to £40 million from what I'm told. I think their limit on a striker is about 30 million. Doesn't seem like Chelsea are going to be willing to sell him for that. So at the moment, it kind of looks like they've got a clear run at him. So they're probably just trying to get it done while that's the case.
Yeah, and £40 million, although it is a lot of money, Villa's owners are very wealthy and they've shown that they can spend the big money, and spending over 30 million for Buendia. And if they do have transfer funds from a possible sale of Grealish, that 40 million wouldn't be an issue for Aston Villa either. And they're making big bids for Smith-Rowe as well, Dean. 2 bids now rejected for the Arsenal midfielder. This one just doesn't seem to go away. Villa seem pretty determined to try and lure him away, although most of us expect Smith-Rowe to end up signing the new deal at Arsenal. Why is it taking so long for them to sort this out?
I think it's just a play, isn't it? I mean, Villa have obviously been in the ears of his representatives, finding out what's going on there, knowing that it's not close to being sorted out. I'm like, well, we'll just go in there and put an offer down. Why not? And it's forcing Arsenal into a corner. They're probably going to end up having to pay Smith-Rowe more than they would have a few months back if this would have been sorted out. It's a strange one for sure, but it's good from Aston Villa to be going down these avenues. Arsenal obviously have no intent to sell, but if Smith-Rowe didn't sign that contract and he did end up leaving Arsenal for Aston Villa, that's not sending out good signals, is it? Like, that's why Arsenal cannot let this happen. If you see that player leave the club this summer, well, where are the club heading? Seriously, where are they heading?
I'll be tuning into Arsenal TV if that does happen this summer, because that will be an interesting watch if they do end up losing Emil Smith-Rowe, because surely Mikel Arteta should be thinking of building his team around him and Bukayo Saka, 2 young, exciting English players. But very ambitious move from Villa, but I think in the end, Arsenal would be foolish to let him go. So we'll wait and see what happens on the future of Emil Smith-Rowe, but it does look like Villa are going to be big players in this transfer window this summer. It seems like football really is coming home this summer, Dean. England through to the quarterfinals of the Euros after a very impressive 2-0 win against the archenemy Germany. Now they face Ukraine in Rome this weekend. You've got to be confident that England can get the job done here and book their place in the semi-finals.
Yeah, I was at Wembley. You can probably tell from my voice, it's still a bit hoarse from that, but an amazing night. But the performance, obviously this isn't free-flowing total football from England, and I think that we just have to accept that at this point. If we're going to win this tournament, this is how it's going to be done. So even though England will be clear favourites to go and beat Ukraine, I'm not going to predict that they go and steamroll them. I thought they were going to do that to Scotland and they didn't. So I think 1-0, I think that's a good bet. I think from seeing how the team have set up, they're just happy to soak up play in the first half, just make sure that they're in control and comfortable, and then just get that goal in the second half. I'm going to go 1-0, yeah.
Yeah, 1-0 for you, Dean. Yeah, I would think England should win this game quite comfortably, but England don't normally do things comfortably for their fans. But Ukraine, they couldn't have asked for a better pick probably for this quarterfinal game, although it's in Rome and there's no England fans able to travel. I've been really impressed with their defence in the tournament so far, and even when Jordan Pickford's been called upon, he's done the job and made some vital saves. So I expect another clean sheet for England, and I'll go for a 2-0 win for England to book their place in the semi-finals of the Euros. One team who've made a move finally on the managerial front, it seems, Dean, is Crystal Palace. It looks like Patrick Vieira is set to replace Roy Hodgson at Selhurst Park. Terms are agreed. It could be done within the next 24 to 48 hours. This one, the former Arsenal captain, the former France international. Bit of a surprise, this one, Dean. I don't think many people saw Patrick Vieira being the man that Palace would turn to right now. Obviously, they had a lot of people turn the job down when they thought they had them over the line, the likes of Nuno. Also, Lucien Favre, the former Dortmund manager, had agreed terms before it collapsed at the 11th hour as well. So, is this a big gamble by Palace and getting Patrick Vieira's first real managerial job in the Premier League, and a huge opportunity for Vieira, I suppose, if you look at it on the flip side?
It is quite a big gamble, yeah. I mean, look, like you say, it's not, as we're recording this, it's not done yet. And after what's happened with the Palace's last couple of attempts at getting managers, I'm not going to say this is done until it's absolutely sealed and delivered. But yeah, I do think Vieira is a bit of a risk. Like, you look at his record of where he's been. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, a couple of months ago, it looked like he might be going to Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Now he's going to Crystal Palace. So that is quite strange. I think from what I was told, Lucien Favre and Nuno were both unconvinced, I think would be the word, of Palace's desire to go and spend heavily in the transfer market, but they have to. We're hearing that potentially they're going to go out and spend, he's going to get £80 million to spend, which we'll see about that. But that might even not be enough, because when you see the prices of players this summer, when you see how many players are actually leaving the club, I'm not sure what 80 million is actually going to get you anyway, because they need like 6-7 players, like literally. So it's a very interesting appointment. And look, Vieira's lovely guy, and I think the players would love working with him. I know people that worked at New York City FC, and they just loved working with him. Like, everyone around the club said he was just such a nice guy, taught everybody so much, not even just about football, just about life. Like, that's just the kind of guy he is, and you see that on TV. But ultimately, Crystal Palace are in a really sticky spot right now, because they didn't really know if they even wanted to part ways with Roy Hodgson, because he was a safe pair of hands and they knew he could keep them in the Premier League. To try Vieira, pretty much untested, definitely at this level, is a gamble.
Yeah, massive gamble. And they'll be hoping it doesn't backfire like the other gamble they did before Roy Hodgson, when Frank de Boer was brought in to lead Palace on a new path and a new style of football and everything. He lasted 5 games, just 77 days, I think, in charge at Selhurst Park, before they had to turn to Roy Hodgson to steady the ship and keep them in the Premier League, which he did during his 4 years at Selhurst Park as well. So it's going to be key for Vieira to get off to a good start. And in his intro, Dean, will be to try and resolve the future of Wilfried Zaha. You said the players that have played under Vieira at his previous clubs really enjoyed working with him. So I think that's going to be key for Vieira, is to get Zaha on board, because he doesn't really need a summer of transfer speculation surrounding probably Palace's best player again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Roy Hodgson at times found Wilfried Zaha very hard to manage and to get the best out of him on a regular basis. He was really frustrated by it. I know that for a fact. And Zaha is your game changer, and he can define your season, and he just hasn't turned up often enough for Crystal Palace. I think that the one thing that you would get from Patrick Vieira, though, is that Zaha might be inspired and look up to him. And if Vieira can really take him under his wing, I feel like he's somebody that could really work and help Zaha play at consistently high level, which Hodgson just couldn't quite manage to do. I'm always sceptical anyway about whether Zaha's ever going to leave Crystal Palace again. I don't know if anyone's going to pay the money that Crystal Palace want. I don't know what what offer he's genuinely expecting to come along for him at this point of his career and the form that he's been in. Yeah. So I think Zaha will be there anyway. But let's see what he can do. I think obviously that's where you're going to have to start building your team around, and you just really make Zaha feel like the superstar that he thinks he is and wants to be.
Yeah, it's going to be key for Vieira to get Zaha on side straight away, because I'm sure, like every summer transfer window, we will have rumours about Zaha possibly leaving. But he's on a really lucrative contract there at Palace, and not a lot of teams will be able to afford probably what he's on at Palace right now. And I think, as you said, Dean, the ship is probably sailed for Wilfried Zaha to get one of those top six clubs. Maybe a couple of seasons ago, we had Arsenal who were very interested in him. It didn't happen, but I think Arsenal have probably moved on from Wilfried Zaha right now. So Patrick Vieira can get him on the same hymn sheet as him. I'm sure Crystal Palace will see the best of Wilfried Zaha again next season as well. But big rebuilding job ahead for Crystal Palace, and Patrick Vieira looking like the man to carry that out. Moving on then, another club with a big rebuilding job this summer, it seems, is Wolves. We all know that Nuno has obviously left Molineux after a successful 4-year spell there. Bruno Lage, the Portuguese manager, has been brought in to replace him. But it looks like He's going to have to deal with a big clear out of players as well right now. Rui Patricio seemingly on the verge of a move to Roma in Serie A to join up with Jose Mourinho. Then we've also got a lot of talk that Ruben Neves, who's been a key man for Wolves under Nuno, is maybe on his way out as well, with talk of Arsenal being in for him. What's your latest take on Wolves, and what are you expecting ins and outs at Molineux this summer?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. And an area that they're going to have to, proceed with very carefully, because ultimately it looks like they're going to need to buy a new midfielder, right? And, after seeing the way that this team has grown under Nuno, and now they're going to have to move on to a new path, replacing the guys that have been in there, whether it's, Neves, Moutinho, whoever, you're looking for someone to inspire the team and also have that creativity and that experience and that level of talent. It's going to be very difficult. Obviously, they'll fall back on those Portuguese links, I'm sure, but I don't know where they're going to go here. But I think that one of their main priorities is certainly going to be the middle of the park. I've had a couple of people mentioning, could they turn to someone with experience like Ross Barkley, for example, or maybe even Loftus-Cheek. But I'm not convinced that those paths are where Wolves are going to be saved right now. And I do say saved because I think that they're in a dicey situation, like Crystal Palace. Maybe not quite as deep as Palace, but ultimately, when you overhaul a team like this, manager and key players, you're kind of starting afresh. And going into a new Premier League season, you really don't know what to expect from that. And the first 5 games will really define how things are going to go.
Yeah, it's a real tough act to follow, Nuno. He did such a remarkable job there during his 4 years at Molineux. Do you think Wolves, as you said, could be in real trouble next season? A relegation fight possibly for them?
I mean, it seems strange after what we've seen in the last couple of years, but when things happen like this, we've seen it before. Teams they establish themselves and they try to push themselves onto that next level. And sometimes you just fall and you lose the traits that made you as good as you were. And that's what they've got to make sure doesn't fall away, that the core of this squad and of this side and for how good they've actually been so far remains. And I think that's going to be so difficult to maintain, especially if you're taking away people like Patricio, who are such leaders and such an inspiration, not only on the pitch, but off it.
Yeah, as you said, key players maybe leaving Molineux. Another one that always gets talked about, Dean, is Adama Traore. Big talk of maybe interest from Chelsea for him to play in the right wing-back role. They've seemingly missed out on Hakimi from Inter Milan, who's close to joining PSG as well. Traore still hasn't signed a contract. I think that's been on offer from Wolves now. And could you see this possibly move happening, Traore to Chelsea?
I'm not sure about Traore to Chelsea specifically, but I do think it's very reasonable to expect that he will leave. Leeds are very interested in signing him. And I know that when Nuno was in talks with Crystal Palace, he talked to Crystal Palace about wanting Traore at Crystal Palace and wanted them to go ahead with trying to get that deal done. And they were willing to do that if he was going to sign a contract. So maybe Nuno will try that wherever he ends up. But I think Traore himself too will be looking around and thinking, okay, the whole club's changing. It's time for me to change as well. And I think that obviously he's ambitious. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's one of the big names that ends up leaving.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a vital summer for Wolves and their new manager, Bruno Lage, to try and rebuild things at Molineux following the departure of Nuno as their manager. But yeah, another team who are beginning the new era, Dean, is Fulham. Scott Parker, as expected, has left and joined Championship rivals Bournemouth. So that leaves Fulham looking for a new manager. Chris Wilder seems to be the early favourite right now, Dean, for the role. And then we've also got maybe Swansea boss Steve Cooper, second favourite at the minute. And then also interesting name that I've seen crop up is Slaven Bilic as well, maybe being a contender for this job. You're a Fulham fan, Dean. Who would you like to see in there to replace Scott Parker?
I mean, personally, I'd quite like to see Javi Pereira, who was, an assistant under Slav and still has close links with Fulham. And I know that he's one of the people that they have been considering for this job. I think he knows the squad. I think that he understands the setup behind the scenes. And you need somebody that's on board with the way that Fulham recruit, the way that the club is run above you, and knowing what your role actually is. And if he's willing to understand that from personal experience and take the job, then I'm quite on board with that. I'm not sure he's the front runner though. I think that Steve Cooper of Swansea probably is the front runner. I think that that's the one that they would go for if they could. Obviously there's compensation issues with Swansea. I think it's more than 3 million. 3 million's been reported. I think it's more than that. I think it's at least 3.5 million to get him out. And I don't know. I don't know if Fulham will pay it. Steve Cooper is very keen to try himself at another club and take the next step up in his own career. He's been looking at various options across the summer. So I think he would really fancy this and go and prove himself. Ultimately, Chris Wilder did a great job at Sheffield United, but he knew the club. He doesn't know Fulham. He doesn't have any bonds with any of the players, doesn't understand the relationships behind the scenes, no link to the fans. Don't really know that's a good route to go down right now. I think that Pereira is the safest, and then if they're not going to go down that, then I think Cooper's probably the one to try.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, they've held a couple of meetings with Steve Cooper to see if he would be the right man to replace Scott Parker. But yeah, as you said, Fulham not overly keen on paying that big compensation package to Swansea if they are to appoint Cooper as well. Who's obviously got good links with the England under-17s. He's managed to attract good players to Swansea while he's manager there as well. So that might be something that interests Fulham as well. But Chris Wilder, I know his people are pushing him hard here to try and get this job. They think this could be the right fit for him to go back into management after his spell at Sheffield United. He's got promotions on his CV as well, and that's what Fulham want. They want to get back to the Premier League as soon as possible, and maybe they'll see Chris Wilder as being the right man, despite maybe not you think him as being the right fit for a Fulham type of manager, considering his Yorkshire roots. He's a Sheffield United man through and through, but I think he's been there, done it. He's got the T-shirt, and maybe he might have a point to prove to Sheffield United following his departure as well. But it's vital, Dean, that they get this one right, because season's just over a month away now, and players are back in for pre-season training now. So as soon as they get a manager in, they want to get their plans in place, or otherwise they'll be missing out maybe on potential transfer targets in the transfer window.
Yeah, Fulham have already started training, so they're already in there doing their early running drills. They're waiting to find out what's going to happen here. I mean, Wilder is interesting. I just hope that, to be honest, he sounds out Scott Parker to find out why he's left Fulham for Bournemouth. I mean, it's such a strange move to make. It's not even a sideways step at the moment. It's a step back, because Bournemouth just aren't quite at the level Fulham are. And you even look at it from a recruitment point of view, and yes, he might get a bigger say at Bournemouth in what's going to happen, but he's not going to have any more money to spend. I think Chris Wilder, one of the things he enjoyed about getting Sheffield United up to the Premier League was that he was so intrinsic to having a say in how the team was built and them listening to what would happen. Ultimately, things started to go wrong at Sheffield United when he didn't get the players that he needed and wanted to come in and take the club that next step. And as it was, things levelled out, a couple of injuries, just didn't have what it took to stay in the Premier League, and he lost his job. And, that could easily happen again at Fulham. So I just hope that, as I say, any manager understands the way that recruitment works at Fulham in terms of data, and that you really don't get much say in the targets that are put on the table in terms of what comes in. And yeah, think for a second, why has Scott Parker made the move that he has? It can't be a perfect place to work.
No, I don't know if Scott Parker just wants to be near the seaside maybe, or something down at Bournemouth. But yeah, interesting to hear that. Like you said, you don't get a lot of impact in the transfer market or influence over what Fulham are planning to do. As you said, lots stats based and data based, and maybe that might not suit some of the managers who are in the running for this role. Possibly Fulham just looking for a head coach to concentrate on coaching the team rather than get involved in the overall business of transfers and contracts as well. So yeah, let's see who Fulham end up going for, but it seems like it's Chris Wilder and Steve Cooper are the two front runners for this role. Right, that's us here for another week on Touchline Talk. We will be back next week for more news and insight on the latest football transfer gossip.